December 4th, 2024. A UnitedHealthcare CEO gunned down on a Manhattan street in broad daylight. 5 days later, authorities arrest 27-year-old Luigi Mangione in a Pennsylvania McDonald's. Case closed, right? But here's the question no one's asking. Why would a computer science genius leave a digital trail that leads straight to his capture? What you're about to hear challenges the official narrative. An Ivy League valedictorian allegedly becomes a cold-blooded killer. But what if the real crime is what we're not being told? The deeper you dig, the more the story unravels. Brian Thompson, 50, CEO of UnitedHealthcare, was walking to an investor meeting at 6:45 a.m. when a masked gunman approached from behind. 3 shots. The shooter calmly walked away, then disappeared on an e-bike. Professional execution in the heart of Manhattan's surveillance network. But here's what's strange. Mangione was taken into federal custody and charged with murder through use of a firearm, 2 stalking charges, and a firearms offense. Yet, ask yourself this. If you have surveillance footage from dozens of Manhattan cameras, why do you need a McDonald's worker's tip to find your suspect? And why was he still carrying evidence that could convict him 5 days later? Here's an even better question. What are the odds that America's most surveilled city couldn't track one man, but a random fast food worker in Pennsylvania could? Luigi Nicholas Mangione, Ivy League graduate and valedictorian of his class at a private all-boys high school. Computer science graduate from the University of Pennsylvania. Former data engineer at successful tech companies. At 27, this is not the typical profile of someone who allegedly commits a high-profile assassination. His social media painted a picture of someone struggling with chronic back pain, fascinated by technology, and increasingly critical of the healthcare system. Mangione traveled to Asia for several months in early 2024, posting about his travels on Reddit in April, saying he had visited various countries during the past 2 months. Then something changed. Friends say he went dark, stopped responding to messages, became increasingly isolated. Here's what nobody's asking. What happened during those months in Asia? Who did he meet? What did he learn? And why does his transformation timeline so perfectly align with when authorities say he started planning? Even more curious, how does someone plan a professional assassination, but then behave like an amateur for the next 5 days? The official story says Mangione carried fake IDs, a manifesto, and the murder weapon for 5 days after the killing. Think about that logic. If you just executed the most sophisticated assassination in recent American history, complete with escape routes and professional timing, would you suddenly become careless enough to carry incriminating evidence for nearly a week? Here's the million-dollar question. Was he caught because he got sloppy, or because he was meant to be caught? And if he was meant to be caught, who benefits from this narrative? The so-called manifesto paints UnitedHealthcare as a symbol of corporate greed in America's broken healthcare system. These parasites had it coming, it allegedly read. But here's what's interesting. Why would someone smart enough to plan a perfect execution be dumb enough to write down his confession? And why does this manifesto read exactly like what prosecutors would need to prove motive? Ask yourself, if you were framing someone for murder, what evidence would you plant? A manifesto explaining motive, fake IDs showing premeditation, and the murder weapon for physical evidence? It's almost too convenient, isn't it? Here's where it gets interesting. Prosecutors initially charged the 27-year-old with murder as an act of terrorism. But recently, a New York state judge dismissed those terrorism charges as legally insufficient, though keeping the straightforward murder charge. However, federal prosecutors are pursuing separate charges, including murder through use of a firearm, which carries the death penalty. Attorney General Pamela Bondi has directed prosecutors to seek execution, a decision Mangione's lawyers argue is based on politics, not merit. The public reaction reveals something profound about American society. Social media exploded not with condemnation, but with support. Mangione became a folk hero overnight. But here's the uncomfortable question. What does it say about our healthcare system when millions of Americans celebrate a CEO's murder? And more importantly, who benefits when public anger gets channeled into supporting violence instead of demanding systemic change? Think about it. Would you rather have millions of angry Americans organizing for healthcare reform, or cheering for one alleged killer who will spend life in prison? The government's response? Unprecedented security measures. Mangione transported like Hannibal Lecter, surrounded by dozens of armed officers, helicopters overhead. For a 26-year-old computer programmer, the optics scream desperation to control the narrative. But let's examine the evidence critically. Surveillance footage shows the shooter's build and movement patterns. Facial recognition technology identified Mangione from camera footage. His digital footprint allegedly connected him to researching Thompson's schedule and movements. Yet significant gaps remain. No definitive DNA evidence at the crime scene. The murder weapon's chain of custody raises questions. Witness identifications remain inconsistent. The prosecution's case relies heavily on circumstantial evidence and digital traces. In a recent hearing, a judge dismissed state terrorism charges as legally insufficient, delivering Mangione a significant win. However, he still faces federal murder charges that carry the death penalty, with the Attorney General specifically directing prosecutors to seek execution. Consider the timing. Healthcare reform debates intensifying, corporate accountability movements growing, public anger at insurance companies reaching boiling points. Then suddenly, a lone wolf assassin eliminates a healthcare CEO, providing perfect justification for increased corporate security and surveillance. The healthcare industry immediately closed ranks. Executive protection services saw massive demand increases. Corporate security budgets exploded overnight. Who benefits when the public fears targeting business leaders? The same corporations that profit from America's broken systems. Mangione's online activity reveals someone researching chronic pain treatments, exploring alternative medicine, documenting insurance denials. His alleged radicalization wasn't political, it was personal. Someone destroyed by the very system Thompson profited from. UnitedHealthcare's business model depends on denying claims, limiting coverage, maximizing shareholder profits over patient care. Thompson's leadership made billions while Americans died from treatable conditions they couldn't afford. The real question isn't why someone might target him, it's why it took so long. But here's what bothers critical thinkers most. Why does this story feel scripted? A brilliant computer programmer allegedly leaves digital breadcrumbs leading directly to his capture, carries evidence for days, then gets caught at McDonald. What if I told you there's a third possibility nobody's discussing? What if Luigi Mangione didn't pull the trigger, but knows who did? What if he's protecting someone else? Or what if the real killer is still out there while we focus on the perfect fall guy? The prosecution wants you to see a deranged killer who snapped. The defense paints a victim of systemic healthcare failures who reached his breaking point. But what if both narratives serve the same purpose, distracting from uncomfortable truths about American healthcare? Thompson's death didn't change UnitedHealthcare's business model. Stock prices recovered. Claim denials continue. Executive compensation packages remain obscene. If this was terrorism meant to terrorize the healthcare industry into reform, it failed completely. Instead, it provided perfect cover for increased security, surveillance, and crackdowns on corporate criticism. The real winners? The same companies that profit from human suffering, now with justification for treating critics as potential terrorists. Mangione's case exposes the mythology of American justice. An Ivy League graduate facing potential execution for allegedly targeting someone whose company's policies killed thousands through denied coverage. Which death penalty seems more justified? The trial will reveal whether evidence supports conviction beyond reasonable doubt. But regardless of Mangione's guilt or innocence, his case illuminates systemic failures that created conditions for violence. America's healthcare system kills approximately 45,000 people annually through lack of coverage. UnitedHealthcare alone denies claims at twice the industry average. These aren't accidents. They're profit-driven decisions with deadly consequences. Yet, targeting individual executives won't fix systemic problems. Real change requires political solutions, regulatory reforms, public pressure campaigns. Violence only provides justification for authoritarian responses that protect existing power structures. The Luigi Mangione case isn't really about one man's alleged crimes. It's about an entire society grappling with moral failures of systems that prioritize profits over human lives. His story, true or false, reflects deeper truths about American inequality and injustice. As this case unfolds, ask yourself these crucial questions. Who benefits from the official narrative? What questions aren't being asked? The prosecution will present their evidence. The defense will challenge assumptions. 12 jurors will decide guilt or innocence. But the real verdict on American healthcare's moral bankruptcy was delivered long before December 4, 2024. Luigi Mangione may or may not be guilty of murder. But he's definitely guilty of forcing America to confront uncomfortable truths about systems that profit from human suffering. Sometimes, the most dangerous criminals are those who expose the crimes hiding in plain sight. This case challenges everything you think you know about justice, healthcare, and corporate accountability in America. The questions it raises matter more than the answers prosecutors claim to have. As always, we encourage you to research multiple sources, question official narratives, and form your own conclusions about this complex case. If you found this analysis thought-provoking, subscribe for more deep dives into stories that challenge conventional wisdom. Remember to question everything, seek multiple perspectives, and never stop thinking for yourself. Thanks for watching.